The pharmacy was bright and cozy, almost like home. Colorful jars of various ointments, gels, and herbal concoctions lined the shelves. The air was filled with the pleasant scent of herbs. The girls working in the pharmacy politely attended to customers, as there were always plenty of them. In recent years, many people had been happily purchasing natural remedies, preferring them over antibiotics. The company had an impeccable reputation. The herbs used for medicines were sourced from ecologically clean areas, and they even sold natural honey. The director entered the pharmacy, a woman around 35 years old named Virginia. She looked stunning as always, with barely noticeable daytime makeup, a fashionable haircut, and a slim figure. Many men often admired her appearance. However, the pharmacy staff was a bit afraid of her. Virginia was a very demanding director. She always carefully reviewed the footage from the security cameras, observing how the staff interacted with customers. If she wasn't pleased, she would reprimand them. She rewarded good work with bonuses but wasn't hesitant to dismiss for poor performance. The staff greeted her politely, but Virginia was in a bad mood today. She nodded at them and said, "Drina, after you are done with the customer, come to my office." This usually meant trouble, and the girls sadly went to Virginia's office. "A week ago, you were responsible for organizing customer orders for delivery. Now, read the reviews they left about us. Many customers complained that they received the wrong medication, and 2 of them didn't receive the promised gift, handmade soap. What does this mean? Do you realize that such carelessness tarnishes our company's image?" Of course, I resolved all issues with the customers, providing replacements and additional bonuses. But I have to discipline you. I won't tolerate such attitude towards work," Virginia said discontentedly. The girl lowered her head. She had nothing to say. Last week, she had indeed been very careless because she had an argument with her fiancé. "I'm sorry, Virginia. I won't make such mistakes again. I promise. Please don't fire me. My fiancé and I are facing some financial difficulties," the girl pleaded. Virginia looked at her attentively and replied, "Fine. I won't fire you for now. You've never made such mistakes before. But this is your final warning. You won't receive a bonus this month. If this happens again, I'll have to let you go. At work, you should only focus on work. That's it. You can leave my office." Virginia turned on her computer and started working on the accounts. She always had a lot of work to do. Her husband had long been involved in pharmacy promotion, but it was Virginia who came up with the idea of selling natural remedies. Now, they ran this business together. Their pharmacies were scattered throughout the city, and customers could even order products online. It was quite a successful business. However, the spouses were constantly busy, with no free time. They had to oversee both production and pharmacy sales. The workday ended quickly, and towards the evening, her husband, Will, called her. "Darling, are you finished with work? I'm free now, and I'll swing by to pick you up. How about we have dinner at a restaurant and skip cooking at home? We can relax a bit first, and then we'll go to the jewelry store. I've got a surprise gift for you." Virginia smiled and replied, "You're such a wonderful husband. Of course, I'm in. Let's go. I love you." After hearing the proposal, she felt like she hadn't even been tired at work. She brewed herself some coffee and leaned back in her chair, reminiscing about how she and Will first met. Virginia was born and raised in a neighboring city, in a prosperous family. Her father was the chief engineer at a company, while her mother worked in the project department of the same company. Her parents were always passionate about something and were very emotional people. They often argued but quickly made up. The girl saw how much they loved each other. They didn't raise their daughter strictly but didn't spoil her either. They allowed her to explore any creative abilities she had and watched over her talents. It was her father who first noticed Virginia's interest in chemistry and biology. The girl often conducted quite dangerous experiments at school, which teachers told her parents about. Her wise father advised her to enroll in the pharmaceutical faculty at university. And he was right. Virginia found it very easy to study at university. She never skipped classes and was the top student in her class. Many classmates tried to court the pretty and intelligent girl, but none of the boys managed to capture Virginia's interest. Of course, she occasionally went on dates or to the movies with friends, but she didn't think about any long-term relationships. She dreamed of meeting a smart and strong guy like her father. After graduating from university, she landed a job as a pharmaceutical technologist in a pharmacy chain where Will worked. During the interview, Will realized that Virginia was a very intelligent girl. She could list all the groups of drugs and accurately name their compositions. Plus, she appealed to Will's aesthetic sensibilities. She was very beautiful and serious enough. Will, too, was unmarried. Firstly, he worked a lot, and secondly, all his romances with girls were short-lived because most of them chose him only for his money. Virginia worked a lot and responsibly. She often attended seminars and forums, mastering new technologies. It was there that she conceived the idea of producing natural herbal safe remedies, studied a lot of literature, and decided to implement this direction in their pharmacies. After 6 months of work, Virginia already had 3 branches of her pharmacies and was striving for further development. She wasn't ashamed of the medicines. After all, the products were all of really high quality. During this time, she and Will became very close. At first, they were colleagues, then friends and business partners, and then they became husband and wife. It all happened somewhat unnoticed and quite quickly. A year and a half ago, the couple celebrated a lavish wedding. The bride's parents approved of her choice because they really liked Will. He was a confident man who was already successfully managing his business. Domestic chores were no problem for the newlyweds either, as they were both busy individuals who are always occupied with work. They never made each other cook meals and could dine out together at restaurants. They shared household duties together. Will turned out to be a sensitive and tender husband who often spoiled his wife and bought her jewelry. They considered their family strong and reliable, thinking it would always be that way. Virginia stretched in her chair and smiled dreamily, thinking, I wonder what surprise Will has prepared for me. How lucky I am to have him. On the contrary, Will was in a bad mood that day. He had that same bad dream from his youth again, where an elderly bearded man falls to the floor. Blood appears in his eyes. He wheezes. Tears open his shirt collar, looks into Will's eyes, and whispers, You will all go to hell, you heartless people. May you be cursed. The man couldn't stop thinking about that dream for a long time. He quietly went to the kitchen and drank a glass of water. Will immediately recalled his difficult childhood and youth, which he wanted to forget forever, never to think about it again. But every time after this dream, the man remembered the unpleasant moments of his life, as if in punishment for all his actions. Will grew up in an unstable family. He practically didn't have a childhood. His parents were constantly drinking alcohol, so they often fought and quarreled. His mother tried not to notice her son and only occasionally looked sadly at him, showing no reaction to any attempts by the child to bond with her. His father often beat his entire family, even young Will. The only close person to the boy was his beloved grandmother, Colleen. Grandma always tried to protect her grandson. She tried to dress him, feed him, and protect him from beatings. But she couldn't fix much because her son took her benefits, threatening to evict her from the apartment if she didn't give him money. Little Will sincerely loved his grandmother and hated his parents, feeling very ashamed of them. The atmosphere in their house was very difficult, so most of the time the boy was outside, playing with other poor children. Grandma also sent the boy to the first grade of school. He was dressed worse than everyone else in the class, and he had an old, slightly torn backpack in his hands, so classmates immediately started laughing at him. But when he turned 8, Colleen died because her son, Will's father, beat her to death while drunk. The man was sent to prison for her murder, and the boy's mother began leading a terrible lifestyle, continuing to ignore her son. As a result, Will was taken to an orphanage by Child Protective Services. Many children hate this place, especially those who grew up in normal families. They can't get used to the strict regime and strangers. Children want to be placed in a new family again and feel the warmth of home. But Will was glad to be there. They washed him, dressed him, and no one drank alcohol or beat anyone near him. Psychologists at the orphanage, working with the boy for 3 years, managed to help him become a normal child. Will did well in school. He loved studying mathematics and physics, and he always read a lot. The caregivers at the orphanage praised him for his desire to learn and sometimes treated him to sweets. The boy adored reading books and completely immersed himself in the plot. He felt like he was in those events described in the books, feeling like a policeman, a cool cowboy, or a rescuer. Will dreamed that when he grew up, he would definitely become a rich and successful person. He was sure that he would never drink alcohol or mistreat his children. He wouldn't become like his parents. The caregivers at the orphanage told him that he needed to get a higher education, that he had every chance of becoming a normal person and finding a good job. At first, Will believed this and was serious about it. But as soon as he left the orphanage and started living independently, everything changed. It turned out that he urgently needed to find a job and support himself. After all, he had absolutely no one to help him. Will couldn't get into university. He failed the exam and was very upset. And without a higher education, he couldn't get a decent job. He was offered work for which he was practically not paid. The guy was very angry and couldn't understand how one could achieve anything if no one even gave a chance. He wanted to become successful immediately, not work for someone else for a small salary. And then he met his friends, with whom he used to spend time in the yard. Howard and Tim had long been on the police's radar. They stole or took money from little kids. It was these friends who suggested to Will to rob a jewelry workshop. They had wanted to do it for a long time and found out that there was only an old master in the building, with no cameras or security. But there was a lot of gold jewelry there. Will hesitated and couldn't decide on such an action. No, guys, I don't want to be involved in such a thing. What if we get caught? Then we'll be sent to prison. And how will we sell the stolen gold afterward? I don't want to ruin my life. Will protested, but Tim was very persuasive. Will, are you going to betray us? You've always been unable to achieve anything on your own, and you've always been afraid of your father. And then he killed your grandmother. Just think about it. There will only be an old man in this jewelry workshop. We won't even touch him. We'll just scare him a little. We'll cover our faces so he won't remember us. We'll take the gold and run away. That's it. And selling the gold is very easy. I know a place where no one will ask us any extra questions. Then you can start a new life, as you wanted. Or you can go somewhere else. It's up to you, as long as you have money. But if you're so afraid, then you just need to be at the entrance to the jewelry workshop and make sure no one enters. So they decided. Will was very nervous. His hands were shaking. He vividly remembered that terrible day. How he stood behind the entrance door, staring at the lock, looking at the people passing by, quietly praying for it to end quickly. He was very scared at that moment. Suddenly, Will heard the sound of breaking glass, the quiet voice of the jeweler, his friend's screams, and then Howard's hysterical voice. Tim, he seems to be dead. He doesn't seem to be breathing. What do we do now? Will definitely be sent to prison. After these words, Will didn't understand what was happening next. He quickly ran down the stairs and saw that the old master was lying on the floor, gasping. He ran up to him and tried to perform CPR as he was taught in school, pressing on his chest, counting to 5, and back. Suddenly, the old man opened his eyes and struggled to breathe. His tired red eyes looked attentively at Will. And it was to him that he uttered those same words of curse that now tormented the man in his dreams. After that, The jeweler stopped breathing and died. But, as it turned out, he managed to press the panic button. While his friends quickly took valuables from the workshop, Will sat next to the dead man, trying to resuscitate him, hoping he would survive. Private security arrived at the scene, and the security guards took everyone to the police station. Will fully comprehended everything. He kept whispering, "Forgive me. I didn't mean to. I didn't think it would turn out like this." Will vividly remembered the trial and how the relatives of the deceased jeweler cursed them. "To hell with you too. You've deprived a child of a father, orphaned a daughter," someone shouted. Howard and Tim were sentenced to a long term, while Will received a lighter punishment. After all, he hadn't stolen anything himself. His fingerprints were nowhere to be found, and he had tried to provide first aid to the jeweler, albeit unsuccessfully. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Those horrible 3 years were also etched in Will's memory forever. At first, he was severely beaten in the cell, then humiliated by other inmates. He decided to learn how to defend himself. He did push-ups 100 times a day and did sit-ups every day to get himself in good physical shape and survive in prison. This event profoundly affected Will, and he firmly decided that he would never return to that place in his life. He was also ashamed because, it seemed, not only had he ruined his own life, but someone had died because of him, and his daughter was now suffering too. 3 years later, Will was released from prison. It seemed to him that the air outside the prison was completely different, and he couldn't get enough of it. Although he understood perfectly well that now he had a mark on his record that he had served time in prison. After that, he immediately returned home, tidied up his parents' apartment, and started looking for work. But with a criminal record, he was practically not wanted anywhere. Everyone looked at him with condemnation and disgust, and sometimes even fear. At first, Will worked on construction sites, 12 hours a day. His criminal record didn't affect his relationship with people there. What mattered was his ability to work. He saved up his earnings and denied himself everything. And then he just got lucky. He found out that there was a pharmacy for sale in the city, which had stopped being profitable for the owners, and he immediately decided to buy it. But for this purchase, he had to sell his apartment to raise capital. He had entrepreneurial skills, so he was able to build a business. At first, it was very difficult for him. Various services constantly came to him for inspections, and it seemed that these endless inspections would never end. But gradually, everything became easier. Will managed to find good employees and negotiate with suppliers. He understood how to negotiate with various inspections so that they would no longer bother him. Over time, he bought a comfortable car, a 3-room apartment in the city center, and then met Virginia. He didn't even notice when he fell in love with her. She was amazingly beautiful, smart, and wise. Will realized that she was the person he wanted to spend his whole life with, and therefore married Virginia. Now, both he and his wife owned several pharmacies, and their business was thriving. He adored his wife, loved her deeply, and hardly told her anything about his past. He only mentioned that he had no parents and grew up in an orphanage. Virginia felt sorry for him because she had had a happy childhood, while Will was terribly ashamed of how badly he had behaved on the day the jeweler died. Years later, those nightmares still haunted him. Every time, he mentally relived that day. He also carefully hid his criminal record, and his wife had no idea about it. After the tragedy in the jewelry store and serving his sentence in prison, Will vowed to himself that he would succeed in life through honest actions and be able to buy his wife any jewelry she desired. And that's what he did, each time choosing an expensive gift for Virginia, as if proving to himself that he had fulfilled that promise. The evening went wonderfully. Will bought Virginia a beautiful pendant. Then they had dinner at a fine restaurant, and their night was very passionate. The man felt somewhat reassured and once again felt like a completely happy person. A week later, Virginia's friend Gabby came to her office. She worked as a manager at one of the pharmacies, and they had recently become friends. They quickly found common topics for conversation, shared interests. Worriedly, Gabby looked at Virginia and said, "Virginia, don't get nervous, but I was at the club with my friend yesterday and saw your Will with some young girl. They seemed very close. So, pay attention to it. I think she's his lover. I saw them again today when I was late for work. Maybe I'm mistaken, but he went into your building with her." Virginia looked at Gabby and nervously replied, "Don't make up silly things. You probably saw someone else. Will and I have wonderful relationships. He loves me. No, I don't believe you. I don't even want to hear about it. Go to work, Gabby. I need to attend to matters." The girl left the office, but turning back, she said, "Fine. Then don't say I didn't warn you. Where is Will now anyway?" "He left the pharmacy around 9 this morning," and Gabby left her friend's office offended. Virginia began to worry about the girl's words. She remembered that her husband had indeed been somewhat absent-minded and distant lately. He might forget to kiss her or not listen at all to what she was saying. To calm herself down and not imagine unnecessary things, Virginia decided to call her husband and ask where he was at the moment. But he didn't answer the call. It was very strange. Usually, her husband was always available because his business partners and colleagues often called him. Not understanding why, Virginia decided to go home and check her friend's words. She felt uneasy and anxious. She tried to open the door, but it was locked. Virginia started searching for her keys in her purse, but they were not there. "What's going on? I've never lost them before, and I always put them in the purse pocket. Where are they?" Nervously muttered Virginia. She called her husband's phone again, and hearing the long ringing tones, she realized that the sound was coming from inside the apartment. Virginia desperately began to knock on the door, ring the doorbell. She was afraid that something might have happened to Will, and he might be lying unconscious on the floor right now. That's why he couldn't open the door or answer the call. The woman decided to call for help from a neighbor who worked as a locksmith and asked him to open the door lock. That way, she managed to enter the apartment. In the hallway, she caught a floral spicy scent of unfamiliar women's perfume, and she felt scared to proceed further into the room. But still, Virginia went into the bedroom and saw her husband's phone lying on the bed, with over 20 missed calls from her and one from an unknown caller. Virginia decided to dial this number and immediately heard a sweet female voice. "Darling, why are you scaring me like this? Why aren't you answering my calls? I've already made it home. I really enjoyed spending time with you. I'm reminiscing about how passionately you kissed me during our intimacy. When will we meet again? I'm so tired of you spending more time with that old woman than with me." "And who are you, young lady?" asked Virginia. The girl first remained silent, then boldly declared, "I'm his fiancée." "And who are you? And why do you have his phone?" Virginia was astonished by the audacity of the young girl and rudely replied, "I'm his wife, and Will is my husband. And I kindly ask you not to call he anymore. Understood?" But the young girl didn't hang up. Instead, she shouted, "Fine. I'm glad I'm talking to you right now. I love Will, and he loves me. Let him go and don't torment him. He told me how cruel you are." After these words, the girl hung up, and Virginia couldn't comprehend what to do next. With her mouth agape, she tried to grasp what she had just heard. Then she collapsed onto the bed and cried because she felt deeply hurt. They got married just 1.5 years ago, and he already had a lover. It turns out they had met more than once. Then Virginia saw something shiny under the chair and pulled out a woman's earring from there. It turns out that Will not only gave her jewelry but also to his mistress. The woman was so enraged at her husband that she started throwing his things into a suitcase, tearing and stomping on some of them. She despised him. Then, with disgust, she ripped off the bed linen and threw it in the trash. The thought of Will spending time with his lover right here on their bed was unbearable. It was simply intolerable. Then the woman changed the locks in the apartment and put her husband's suitcases with his things in the hallway. And she began to cry again, not knowing how to live further. In the evening, she heard someone trying to open the door. Virginia quickly rushed to the corridor and harshly said, "Why did you come back here? For your things? Well, here they are. Take them and go to your lover. She's eagerly waiting for you." "Virginia, what are you talking about? Think about your words. What lover? I don't have anyone. And I never did. I only love you. What's gotten into you?" her husband asked, surprised. The woman became very angry and, slapping Will in the face, said, "You're such a despicable person. You're lying to me so shamelessly. And you're not even ashamed. You brought your young girl home today. Here, take her. She lost her earring in our bedroom. I can't stand seeing you. We're getting divorced. And don't you ever come back here." Will couldn't bait either and, rubbing his face, replied harshly, "Well, you know, you're not right now. What's wrong with you? Actually, this is our shared apartment. I'll stay in a hotel for a while until you calm down. But then I hope we can have a proper conversation without hysterics." Will left, taking his things. He realized that trying to talk to his wife now was completely pointless. "Gabby, you were right. Will is cheating on me. What a vile person he is. I can't stay home right now. I feel terrible. Can I come over to you?" Virginia cried, calling her friend. "Oh my God. That's awful. Of course, come over. I'm home. Don't worry about this. Don't cry. I'm waiting for you." Virginia cried at her friend's house, and she felt a little better. Debbie firmly told her, "Don't forgive him. Get a divorce and split all the property in half. Otherwise, he'll keep cheating on you, and you'll suffer again. And we'll find you a good husband. I happen to know a decent single man. I'm not going to look for anyone. I don't need another man. Okay, I'll go home now. It's already too late. And I have to go to work tomorrow. Although I have no strength or desire at all." The friend suddenly suggested, "Well, don't go to work tomorrow. Go out of town. Relax there. Figure out what to do next. Your business won't suffer in a week." "Maybe you're right. I can't imagine how I'll be able to work with Will now. I really need some time alone to think about everything." Virginia booked a luxury room at a country hotel nestled in the woods, surrounded by beautiful nature. She and Will used to go there together. The couple enjoyed walking along the autumn trails, admiring the sunsets, and it always felt very romantic to them. Leaving for the hotel, Virginia thought she could relax, indulge in cosmetic procedures and sauna visits. But things turned out differently. Her condition worsened. She felt nauseous all the time, had headaches, and couldn't shake off negative thoughts. Will called her several times a day, but she didn't answer. She didn't want to hear any more lies. Instead of a week of relaxation, the woman barely endured 4 days at the hotel and returned home. She didn't know what to do next. The trip didn't help her calm down at all. Virginia decided to see a doctor because she wasn't getting any better, although she thought it was all due to stress. "Congratulations, madam, you're pregnant. About 4 weeks along. Are we keeping the pregnancy? At your age, I don't advise terminating it. It might be difficult for you to conceive later." The doctor explained her condition. Virginia was shocked. She left the doctor's office without saying anything. This news scared her even more. Why did I get pregnant now of all times? If I had known this a week ago, I would have been ecstatic. And now what should I do? Get divorced and deprive the child of its father? Or have an abortion? Oh, everything is so complicated, she thought. It seemed to her that all the problems arose simultaneously. Troubles also started at work. Sales plummeted, revenue was very low, and Virginia couldn't find the reason. Obviously, someone among her staff was leaking their proprietary recipes to competitors and leaving bad reviews about her pharmacies online. But who was this person? She couldn't figure it out yet. How much she missed her husband's support. His kind words, gentle hugs, and right decisions now. Virginia started to worry because Will hadn't shown up in a week. What happened to him? Where was he? She constantly felt jealous and hurt, making it difficult for her to focus on work. So, the woman decided not to divorce immediately, but to consult the family lawyer, Notary Rogan. They had been working with him for a long time. Therefore, she could trust this person. He never tells anyone anything, and will definitely advise her on what to do next and how to divide their property after the divorce. Their meeting was scheduled in a cozy cafe. Virginia emotionally told him about her problems, her husband's infidelity, and asked for advice. Rogan listened carefully and, frowning, replied, "Let me tell you this, Virginia. I don't know what exactly happened between you and your husband, but I'm almost sure he didn't cheat on you. I'm about to do something unprofessional for a lawyer and tell you someone else's secret. You have the right to know. The thing is, Will recently came to me, and we drew up a will where absolutely everything he owns now after his death will be yours. Do you hear me? Absolutely everything. Well, would he do that if he had a lover? I've never encountered such cases before. Why did he decide to write a will at all? He's still relatively young and healthy. Or is there something else I don't know? Something happened to Will? Well, tell me. Don't keep silent." The woman said, surprised, "Yes, you probably don't know everything, and will ask you not to be told anything. But I can't. He's seriously ill, and he only found out recently, so he made a will. He's upset and doesn't know what to do, you understand. He doesn't want to get treatment and do everything possible to get better. He loves you, Virginia, and he's very upset about your breakup. You asked for my advice. Well, here it is. You need to meet with Will and calmly talk about everything without emotions and scandals. Don't rush into divorce. Calm down. You have a very good family, and you shouldn't make such decisions out of emotions. And now, excuse me, I have to go. I have a lot of work to do," sighed Rogan. The lawyer left the cafe, and Virginia sat there, trying to process what she had just heard. All her hatred and anger towards her husband disappeared somewhere. She decided that even if Will had cheated on her, she was ready to forgive him. After all, he must have realized he was wrong and wanted to come back to her. They needed to try starting anew. Right now, her closest and dearest person was in trouble, and she was obligated to help him. Virginia decisively dialed her husband's phone, and he answered right away. She exhaled and said quietly, "Hello, Will. I'll be home in an hour. Come over. We need to talk about everything." The man was very happy because he missed his wife so much and sincerely didn't understand what he was guilty of. So he replied, "Hello, my love. Finally, you answered. I'm on my way. Wait for me." Their meeting turned out to be very emotional. Without saying a word, they hugged each other and cried for a long time. And then they talked all night in the kitchen. Will finally decided to tell Virginia about his difficult childhood, the robbery, and even about serving time in prison. "You know, this story haunts me. I'm truly guilty of that, but nothing else. I swear I never cheated on you. That day when we argued, I really forgot my phone at home and was running errands until evening. And when I came home, you nearly killed me. And for what? I still don't understand. I don't know who was calling me. I don't understand how that woman's earring ended up in our apartment and whose it is. Now I'm beginning to understand something. Someone deliberately wanted to stir up trouble between us. I distinctly remember that the evening before my working day, my keys were in my bag, and when I came home, I didn't find them there. They seemed to have disappeared. So I had to break the door lock. At first, I thought I had lost them myself, but it turns out someone deliberately stole them from me and did all this. But who could have done it? Business competitors wouldn't be interested in our family quarrels, and our family doesn't have any enemies. It's all very strange. But what worries me now is something else. Will, why didn't you tell me you were sick? Are we strangers to each other? Why did you decide everything for both of us? You absolutely must get treatment. What's your diagnosis? Virginia asked. The man sighed heavily, took out a sheet of paper with the test results from his briefcase, and handed it to his wife. I still can't believe it myself. I didn't feel anything wrong, and I still don't. No coughing, nothing. I found out about it during my annual X-ray. And when the doctors gave me the results and sent me to the oncology clinic, I was shocked. Virginia, there's no point in going there. I don't want to go through chemotherapy just to die anyway. If it's meant for me to die, then so be it. I didn't know how to tell you about it, especially after we had just quarreled. And I thought it might be better for you not to know anything about it. Holding the medical report in her hands, Virginia began to shout, "Oh, my God, what a foolish man you are. Can't you understand that I love you and need you, and whether you're healthy or sick? I feel bad without you, Will. And I'm pregnant. Do you want to leave your child without a father? You have someone to live for, and you decided to give up prematurely. We'll go to the clinic together tomorrow morning, and you'll undergo a full examination, and we'll get treatment together. Do you hear me? I'll be by your side. I'll help and support you. Cancer doesn't mean you should do nothing and wait for death. Many people with cancer live for many years. You just have to believe in it." Will began to hug Virginia and kissed her, saying, "This is the best news I've heard in days. I'll do anything now to get better. But what should we do about work? Our business isn't doing very well right now. And now I need treatment. And you can't get nervous. Why did everything happen all at once?" Virginia reassured her husband. "Yes, you're right. It's as if someone deliberately sabotages our performance. I've been trying to find this person, but so far without success. But now our health is the most important thing. We'll deal with everything else later. Tomorrow morning, we're going to the clinic together, and now I'll make dinner for us. Will you have an omelette with bacon?" I was so worried about our breakup that I don't even remember the last time I bought groceries. And there's nothing in the fridge except eggs. Will happily replied, "Of course, I will. You prepare the omelette, and I'll go to the store." What a relief that we made up. Virginia never dared to think badly of me again. We must trust each other and protect our family, our common cause. Then we'll handle everything. I'm such a foolish woman. I almost destroyed my family. No, now I understand for sure that I love Will very much, and I don't need anyone else but him," thought Virginia. The next day, Virginia took her husband to the clinic and found a very good doctor. They began running tests, did a CT scan, a chest X-ray, and now awaited the results. Every night, Virginia prayed for Will's recovery, for a healthy baby, and for the strength to endure it all. Will began to feel better, and now they both tried to figure out what was happening with their business, as the pharmacy's income had decreased even more. While Virginia was in her office, her friend Gabby walked in and asked, "You look great, friend. Why haven't you called me? And why haven't you told me how the divorce process with your husband is going? Did he confess to cheating? Or is he still trying to justify himself?" Virginia felt uncomfortable with Gabby's intrusive questions and bluntly replied, "There will be no divorce between my husband and me. We reconciled, and I'm pregnant, so you can congratulate me. We wanted this baby so much, and now everything is fine with Will and me. We are back together." Gabby reacted very strangely. She started waving her hands and shouting, "You're pregnant. Get an abortion and get divorced. Why do you need a child from a husband who betrayed you? I saw him with another girl. Don't you believe me? Or do you have no pride? He betrayed you, cheats on you, and you're willing to put up with all this. You don't know your husband at all. He's a cruel man." Virginia didn't like what she heard from Gabby at all, and she decided to end the conversation. "You know what, Gabby? This is my decision. I thought we were friends, and you'd be happy for me. But instead, you're saying bad things again. Go back to work, and let's stop these conversations. From now on, we're just colleagues." Gabby was offended and left the office, but Virginia couldn't calm down after that conversation. She decided to communicate with her less and not tell her anything else. The next day was the anniversary of the death of their mutual best friend with her husband, and they decided to visit his grave. But there was construction at the main entrance. The whole road was dug up, so Virginia and Will had to go around the cemetery from the other side. They walked along the graves, and suddenly they saw a beautiful monument depicting an elderly man with a beard and glasses. There were many fresh flowers around his monument, and a card from his daughter lay on top. "Virginia, that's him, the jeweler who died because of our attack on the jewelry workshop. I remember his face very well. It often haunts me, how guilty I am before him," whispered Will. "That's the late father of Gabby, my friend and colleague. I saw the same portrait in her house. I even asked her who it was, and she said it was her father. Wait, and it was Gabby who told me that she saw you with another woman and that you were cheating on me. And then she even comforted me when I kicked you out of the house. And yesterday she claimed that you were a cruel person. It seems like all our problems are somehow connected to your past, but we won't be able to figure it out ourselves," said the woman. Suddenly, Will suggested, "Let's go to a detective agency right now and ask them to investigate everything. I think it will be better this way. And maybe you shouldn't talk to Gabby for now. Shouldn't we consider firing her from work?" Virginia shook her head. "No, we don't need to do that yet. It will be very suspicious. She might disappear, and then we won't find out anything. But I'll be careful in my interactions with her from now on. I trusted her, told her everything about our family, and now I regret it. I even told her about the pregnancy. Now I worry she might come up with something else, but I hope a private detective will help us." The next day, Gabby came to Virginia's office again, holding 2 coffees and hot croissants. "Hi, Virginia. Forgive me. I really said very bad things to you yesterday. You're right. It's none of my business how you decide to act, and I'll always support you. Can we make up? I'm really upset about our argument," the girl said, smiling. Looking at this cute, smiling girl, it was hard to believe she could be capable of anything deceitful. The woman smiled back and said, "Yeah, let's make up. I was wrong yesterday too. Thanks for the coffee." Gabby started drinking from her cup and pushed Virginia's portion of coffee closer. "Drink your coffee while it's still hot. It'll get cold, and it won't taste good. And eat your croissants. You need to enjoy your meal right now." Virginia happily tried the croissant, but her phone rang. It was her partners regarding the raw material supply, and she had a long conversation with them. She waved Gabby away, pointing to the door, and began her business negotiations. She took a small sip of coffee, and she didn't have any more free time to eat. An hour later, Virginia began to feel unwell. She had pain in her lower abdomen and felt very weak. She suddenly looked at the half-drunk coffee and thought, what if Gabby tampered with it? Although it's unlikely, she drank coffee with me too. Strange. Why do I feel so bad? Maybe the coffee has nothing to do with it. She called her husband and told him about her suspicions. Will contacted the detective and quickly came from another pharmacy. He carefully wrapped the coffee cup in a bag, as the detective instructed, and took it to the agency for examination. Virginia went to the hospital to see a doctor. He was very worried about his wife's condition and the condition of their baby. After examining the woman, the doctor also started to get nervous. He realized there was a risk of miscarriage for the woman. They decided to keep Virginia in the hospital under the doctor's observation. Several days passed. Virginia started feeling better, and she was discharged from the hospital. On that day, a private detective came to their home. What he told them frightened the spouses. Gabby was indeed the daughter of the jeweler who died of a heart attack because of the robbers. There were 3 robbers at the jewelry workshop: Will, Tim, and Howard. So, the girl lived with her aunt after her father's death. We talked to this woman. She said her niece couldn't come to terms with the death of her father, as she loved him very much. She became withdrawn and cruel. She constantly said she would only be able to live peacefully when all 3 killers were also dead, like her father. After graduating from university, she moved away from her aunt, and they rarely see each other now. We found out that Tim was killed by other inmates while serving his sentence in prison. But Howard's death was also strange. He fell out of the window of his apartment from the 9th floor, but no one could figure out how it happened. And his wife and young son disappeared altogether, and no one knows where they are now. So, Will, you're the only one of those robbers who's still alive. Apparently, Gabby decided to finish her revenge plan this way. I'm sure of it. Here are the results of the examination. A substance was added to your wife's coffee that induces miscarriage. I believe we need to go to the police station and tell the investigators about Gabby before a tragedy occurs with you or your pregnant wife. I was wondering why the coffee tasted so bad. That's why I couldn't drink it. And if I had drunk it, I would have had a miscarriage. I fully agree with you. Will and I are in danger. We need to go to the police station urgently. I won't let Gabby ruin our lives. Will is guilty of that tragedy, but he has already realized everything and served his time in prison. And I haven't done anything wrong to her at all. Why is she trying to harm me? Nervously spoke Virginia. The police detained Gabby and organized a confrontation with Will and Virginia. When the girl realized that lying was useless, she suddenly burst into laughter, and then with a smile on her face began to speak. Do you even know what my life was like without a father? What was my childhood like? He raised me alone. My mother died when I was born. My father loved me very much, and I loved him too. Those years were the happiest in my life. And then some robbers came and killed him. He died because of them. My life ended that day. Relatives dragged me away from my father's coffin, and I held his hand as long as I could and didn't want to let him go. After the funeral, my aunt took me in. I guess she just felt sorry for me. She became my guardian and received money for me. My aunt treated me normally, fed me, clothed me, educated me. But I always felt like I was a burden to their family. Her husband always looked at me unkindly and could even yell at me. And her son didn't hold back either, speaking about me. He always hinted that he couldn't wait for me to leave his room. And every night I fell asleep thinking that the killers of my father should die too. I was lucky with one. He died while in prison. I didn't even have to do anything. But the second robber I had to help. But you still won't prove anything. But I didn't know about the fate of the third robber for a long time. And then I saw on the internet that Will became a businessman. There was an article about how he achieved everything himself. I hated him even more then because my father has long been gone. Will ruined my life, and he became a businessman himself. And I realized that I had to act. I deliberately got a job with him and befriended his wife. And I decided to ruin your family life. It was so nice to see how you started having problems with your business because I was passing on data to competitors. And now Will is bankrupt. I really wanted him to suffer when you lost the baby. And I would have succeeded. But Virginia turned out to be smarter than I thought and started suspecting something. But I'll never be at peace until I ruin your life. So know that. Why did my father die? And you live and enjoy every day. Is that fair? Gabby had a hysterical outburst. She lunged at Will, trying to scratch his face with her sharp nails. But then the police officers came in, handcuffed her, and led her to another room. Will held his head in his hands, breathing heavily, and said, "It's all my fault. Because of my past, my child almost died. And Gabby is right. I'm guilty of her father's death. I still see in my dreams how the jeweler dies and curses me." Virginia hugged her husband, trying to support him. And the investigator shook his head. We'll send Gabby for involuntary psychiatric evaluation. I think her desire for revenge has turned into an illness. And now she's dangerous to people. We'll get to the bottom of everything. Don't worry. She won't harm you anymore. We'll definitely review the case of the robber Howard's death and the disappearance of his family. I think it happened because of Gabby, as she practically confessed to it just now. In any case, she'll face punishment, and what kind of punishment exactly will be decided by the jury in court. Will left the investigator's office utterly distraught, feeling even more guilty than before. He got into his car and spoke remorsefully. Virginia, I'm a bad person. Gabby could have grown up to be a good person, but because of me and my friends, she's now sick and obsessed with revenge. I think my illness is payback. It's punishment for my actions. If you only knew how much I regret agreeing to all of that back then. But now, nothing can be changed. Will, there's no need to blame yourself so much. You've already served your time in prison, and you've realized everything. The Lord is merciful. He forgives us for such mistakes. The main thing is to sincerely repent and draw conclusions. Understand, you're not to blame for Gabby becoming who she is. We need to forget all of this and move on. If you don't believe me, let's go to church. You'll confess there, and you'll feel better. Virginia said quietly. Will did just that. He went to church, confessed, and indeed felt better. The mentor explained that he needed to stop thinking about it and move on, that he needed to cherish his loved ones and his family. And he promised to pray for Gabby's soul. Soon, the couple was invited to the clinic, where the doctors were ready to announce all the results of the examinations. It turned out that Will didn't have any tumors, just problems with enlarged lymph nodes in his lungs, and he was simply prescribed a course of treatment. After this, he quit smoking cigarettes and couldn't believe that he didn't actually have cancer. But the problems in the family business couldn't be fixed. It turned out that it was Gabby who was the one passing on information to the competitors. While the couple was dealing with their personal problems, they stopped paying attention to the business. So they had to sell the pharmacies at low prices. And after paying off all the debts, they had very little money left. One evening, Virginia and Will, feeling upset, sat in the kitchen, pondering what to do next. And suddenly the woman suggested, Will, let's sell the apartment and move to live by the sea. I've been dreaming of doing this for so long. And we'll be far away from that crazy Gabby and all these problems. I think we'll have enough money for a small cozy house by the sea. And we'll figure something out for work. I believe in you because it's never too late to start over. I'm so tired of everything right now. I just want peace. I want to work along the seashore and listen to the sound of the waves. Will kissed Virginia and agreed with his wife. I agree. It's a great idea. We've worked so hard together, not noticing anything that was happening around us. And we just need to live, love, and enjoy every day. I'll call a friend realtor tomorrow, and we'll put this apartment up for sale. Thank you, Virginia, for being by my side. Together we'll handle everything because we're a family. The spouses sold their apartment and moved to the southern part of the country. They bought a cozy mansion with a large vineyard and began to adapt to the local climate. One day, while cleaning the outbuildings, they found a nest in the attic. A stray gray cat had brought kittens there. They were a little grown and very cute. The woman picked up one of the kittens. It was gray with bright blue eyes. She held it gently and said, Will, let's keep this one, shall we? Look how adorable it is. I'll name him Sooty. I've always dreamed of having a kitten since childhood, but I never had one. He'll be our first pet in the new house. Her husband laughed upon hearing his wife's suggestion, while the cat rubbed against his leg, purring as if it had known him for ages. Then let's keep them all. We'll name the cat Simmy, and the second kitten Puffy. After all, they chose us themselves. I hope they'll be comfortable here. I've always loved cats since childhood. I remember that when the boys from an orphanage bullied the kittens, I always fought with them and protected the animals. I couldn't bear to see the poor kittens suffer. Whenever I petted their soft fur, I dreamed that someday I'd have my own family, and there would be a cat in my house. And now my dream has come true. The fact that a cat with kittens settled in our yard is very good," Will said. Simi quickly adapted to the new place with the kittens. Will made them a cozy home, and Virginia fed them. She adored it when Sooty slept on her lap in the evening. And Will, like a little child, played with the kittens with a ball. It looked really funny and touching. The woman constantly wondered why they hadn't had a pet before. And before, they never even thought about it. They were always rushing somewhere, doing business, and their happiness turned out to be in peace. The atmosphere in their home became much nicer than before, and the mood of the spouses improved. Virginia was no longer afraid for Will's life or the life of their child. Her pregnancy was going well, and the baby amusingly kicked in her stomach. Every day, she ate melons, sweet grapes, and enjoyed swimming in the sea. Will learned about the local markets, met the right people, and decided to start with souvenir production. After all, it didn't require a large initial capital. The wife supported Will's idea of starting souvenir production. She had a great imagination and loved creativity. They started making pillows with aromatic herbs for sleep, pendants, and dishes with painting. So they lived, quietly and peacefully, in love and harmony, eagerly awaiting the birth of their beloved daughter. The investigator called them several times and informed them that Gabby had been declared completely insane, and now she would be detained in a psychiatric clinic for a long time. The girl became immediately aggressive if her treatment was stopped. Unfortunately, she could never forgive her offenders, and she developed mental disorders. Moreover, the investigators found out that it was Gabby who ruined Will's family business. It turns out her boyfriend was working for their competitors, and she was passing on all the information about the company to him. Together, they managed to tarnish Will's reputation with suppliers and customers, who started refusing products after reading false reviews online. So Gabby was able to partially fulfill her revenge plan. All that was left for her was to ruin the businessman's personal life. But she failed in that, as Virginia decided not to divorce her husband. Then Gabby decided to kill their child while it was still in Virginia's womb. She realized the pain it would bring to their family. But Virginia managed to maintain her pregnancy. According to the investigators, Gabby is unlikely to ever leave the gates of the psychiatric clinic. The spouses even pitied her because, besides bitterness and hatred, there was nothing good in Gabby's life. Or rather, there was, but she didn't notice it. Gabby didn't want to start a family or have children. Like most women, she had different goals. Sometimes, the spouses would visit their hometown and come to the monument of the late jeweler. Every time, Will would ask him for forgiveness and take care of his memorial. He considered himself very fortunate that he didn't become a bitter person and didn't continue his criminal activities after prison. Instead, he found love and built a strong family. That mistake of his youth was a lifelong lesson for him, a reminder of what should never be done. In due time, Virginia gave birth to a wonderful daughter, Angeline. Will was very nervous in the delivery room, waiting for Virginia to give birth. But when he held his little daughter in his arms, he immediately kissed her tiny wrinkled nose and couldn't stop looking at the baby. Virginia was also calm and only now understood what true feminine happiness was. After all, being a mother is the greatest reward for any woman. After being discharged from the hospital, her parents came to visit, and everyone rejoiced at the arrival of their granddaughter, constantly holding her in their arms. Will respected Virginia's parents a lot because he had never had such loving mom and dad. So, Virginia's parents became like family to him. Will enjoyed going fishing with Virginia's father, and the women would later fry their catch to a crispy, appetizing golden crust on a large skillet, garnished with fresh herbs. Virginia never regretted losing their successful pharmacy business. Even though they now lived much more modestly than before, there was love and peace in their family. Moreover, Virginia often thought that if Gabby hadn't started to ruin their comfortable life, they might never have decided to change it.